Ian,
Crucible.
we are back. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
Because you left and went to Vegas. Home of the Guy Fieri, right? I don't know where he's from.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, let's just start this over. Ian,
Crucible.
we are back. It has been a while because
Yeah.
you've been away, and but we're back.
And I also just don't like you.
Well, it's not really surprising. Checking out a new movie from Shudder. Now, we got this a couple weeks ago, and I had watched it like a week ago.
Okay.
So this is actually, my anticipation was to do this before the movie came out, since it was a screener. But it's already out.
Yep. So we're talking about a little movie called Boys from County Hell.
Boys from County Hell, an Irish movie.
Misleading title.
Misleading title.
This was filmed in County Sligo, not County Hell.
Honestly, this name is incredibly stupid to me. It makes no sense. But I
kind of like it.
Okay,
Okay, it's kind of fun.
Okay.
It's not overly telling about what it is.
It's
I'll
not
give
at all.
you that.
Yeah, it gave me a different impression than what I would have expected, I guess.
It gives you the sense that it's a horror thing.
Sure, because of hell.
And it kind of, I don't know, it seems a little quirky in a way that makes me feel like this is going to be a comedy. Which
It is.
kind of is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Directed by Chris Baugh.
Is that how you pronounce that?
I don't know. B-A-U-G.
Chris Baugh?
Baugh. I would think the
Like
G-H
Smaug, but Baugh.
But Smaug doesn't end with an H. Smaug.
It's also pronounced smog.
All right, Chris Baugh, much like Smog. We haven't been doing these in a while, have we?
It's a dragon movie. No, it's not.
Yeah, no, Boys from County Hell. It is
Yeah.
a vampire movie.
Yes.
About some young
Spoilers.
lads. Some Irish lads.
Yeah.
And a cairn, which I had no idea.
Cairn.
Cairn, I never heard that phrase before, but it's essentially like a relic type rune type
Went to
thing.
high school with a guy named David Cairn.
Well, it makes sense perfectly.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of rocks that resemble a guy Ian went to high school with, as a relic in a field, and a legend of a vampiric person underneath this, and then some supernatural vampiric hijinks ensue.
Yeah. So to me, this was a bit like an Irish version of I Had a Bloody Good Time at House Harker. Now, I would say this is less comedic than that and more serious. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and bigger production values.
in some ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love House Harker,
so
but yeah.
they kept it tighter, making it a little bit easier, I think, in some ways, than what the House Harker guys did. Because the House Harker guys, they were trying to tell the story in the past, and they were going for a lot more in certain ways.
I guess, but
Whereas this
just felt bigger, and everything was done way on a more budgety level, it seemed. But
Yeah.
we're not here to talk about
Yeah.
House Harker, but
Yeah.
I hear the comparison there. It's a comedy, horror,
it's playing with the vampire legend in its own way.
with some drama,
Yeah.
and it kind of interweaves all these elements in a way that is complex from a filmmaking standpoint. And a lot of times movies that do that, horror comedies, especially low-budget ones, usually fail at that in some ways, whether it's the comedy doesn't work or the horror elements don't work. And this, to me, was almost expertly done, I thought,
In many ways.
where the horror elements were horrific and scary and well done and gory.
Yeah.
The comedy, while it's not at the forefront, there is a lot of zaniness and absurdness and then comedic stuff to it, and most of that all worked for me.
I think of all the elements that you're trying to make work here, I think the comedic ones worked the least well for me, but they didn't not work.
Yeah, I just like the tone with the Irish, and this is very like Irish. Like they talk in a dialect with words that I don't normally hear, and it took a little while to pick up and figure out and discern what the saying was and what it means. But it feels authentic because it is, and the tone is super fun a lot of times. But then they put a lot of time into the characters, and so there's moments of drama,
And that's why the drama sings so well.
and it works.
Yeah.
It works surprisingly well. So that's why I'm like, the way this thing bounces around so much, but still works, to me was impressive. You have moments where it's like, this guy just died and it was awful, and I'm like, wow, that was rough. And then the next moment we're into a comedy scene, and it was like, wow, okay, yeah, it's still funny though.
Yeah.
So what'd you think?
Yeah, I quite liked it.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I thought the vampire creature looked awesome.
Yeah.
And should we talk about this scene? Or should we not
We'll
tell people?
No, we'll get to spoilers.
There is lots of good horror movies. Even so, like, well, I should say a lot of low-budget, mediocre horror movies. Sometimes, like, they become must-sees because of one scene.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like the rest of the movie's just fine. It's mediocre, but this one, you got to see this because there's one fucking thing that happens, and like, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
And they did the
I'm not saying it is mediocre, but
and the smart thing is it's at near the end of the movie, so it leaves you with a lasting effect of like, wow, that was like, and you go out on a high, which is such a good thing to do on a movie, right? Is go out on a high because if you shit the bed at the end, you're the audience is gonna leave disappointed.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of like. What's the word I'm looking for? Is denouement the right word? Like where you're like doing like a come down after the climax. So it's not like it's right at the end because there's a fair amount of
like an epilogue type thing.
Epilogue is a better word for it. I don't even know if I was using the right word.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying, like the climactic moment of the movie. Yeah.
So basically, what I'm saying is this movie is like Return of the King.
Because of smoke?
Yes, because all of the dragons. No.
But the difference here in Return of the King, you had an hour and a half long epilogue because the movie is so long.
And you know what? This movie is probably going to be your #1 movie of the year for one very specific reason. Because you only like movies that have a very specific runtime. This one's 90 minutes on the nose. Not too short,
That's
not
not
too
true
long.
at all, but yeah, let's just go with it. Well, that is the thing, though. I did read a few reviews. People were like, they thought it was boring during the second act. But I don't know. To me, all the character work going on really worked for me. Now,
I guess if you showed up looking for pure horror and all you're looking for is
definitely
blood
not
and guts and gore, I could see that. But if you're looking for a more balanced movie, I don't like you said. I think the characters are what sing in the piece.
Yeah, this isn't setting out to be a Dead Alive or a Evil Dead 2 type thing where it's just zany, over-the-top horror and comedy from the absurdness, because they spend a lot of times on character work in this movie, and there are some themes sprinkled throughout, because this character is like an aimless young youth guy who has no purpose, and he's been through some stuff with his mom dying and his best friends leaving, and then stuff happens, and so you do become invested in him and his journey, and there is an arc. And what I liked about it is a lot of movies, especially, Hollywood, although I feel like we're tampering down on this now in a lot of ways, where it's like, at the end, the hero's like, and you get a girlfriend, and your dad loves, and all this shit. Yeah. And this was like, good things happened to this kid, and he found his purpose and everything, and he worked on relationships, but everything came out in a way where it was like, okay, this feels a little more natural. Yeah. He didn't just get the girl, and his dad and him aren't all of a sudden best friends, but there was something there. You know
I liked that the girl got to go on the journey that multiple other characters had intended for themselves, too. That was kind of like a fun twist.
Yeah.
And they totally could have taken in that, and then the guy and the girl, they hook up in the end, but didn't.
There was hints at it along the way.
But not strong ones, even.
Not strong ones.
Not like I was expecting it to happen.
Yeah. This kid, the main character, looks like Irish Anton Yelchin.
Okay.
But
he's a little bit more alive.
Wow, oh my God. Unfortunately, yeah.
I could see what you're saying there.
And then his dad was Irish Sam Neill.
Sam Neill?
Sam Neill.
I hope Sam Neill doesn't watch this episode. I know he watches a lot of our episodes.
A little more alive.
Yeah. That's a bit of an insult to Sam Neill, I think.
Well, he's a more fatter Sam Neill. But
I'd say the only thing about this movie that I would have changed is the soundtrack. The soundtrack didn't really work for me that well.
Dokken's in it.
Dokken?
They play the Dream Warrior song at the end for some reason. Okay. Yeah, it's weird. I was going to ask you if, like, because it's supposed to be this small Irish town, are they supposed to be, like, a little behind the times? Because a lot of the music was, like, 80s, like, butt rock, kind of like arena rock stuff in the background sometimes.
Oh, there's a lot of folky stuff that I'm thinking
And there was some folky stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit all over the place.
But I was expecting, and maybe a lot of the bands were Irish, and they weren't obviously so to an American ear.
Isn't, but...
Well, no, sure. But like, there was a couple times where there was like a folk music starting, and it felt like it was going to get into like an Irish folk music kind of a thing. No. But then the lyrics would come in, and I'm like, no, that's not at all what I was expecting. I don't know.
Oh, I hear you.
It's just, I wanted it to be a little bit more on the nose Irish, and maybe it's because I'm a dumb American.
But is that... I'm ignorant to this whole thing. But when you say, we're gonna do some Irish music in America, I feel like it's like stereotypical,
It can be.
like Irish sounding thing. But when you go and live in Ireland, is that really what the music sounds like? You know
None
what
of
I mean?
the yeah. But none of the music seemed to have any kind of that Irish lilt in the accent or anything, which is just, I don't know what I was looking for. It doesn't need to be there, but it's just what I was looking for.
I will say about some of the production values, because we're talking about House Harker and stuff. There's a lot of good camera work in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a really cool sequence where it's like a one shot where they're running out to the car and the camera goes in the car and then out of the car while a vampire is attacking them. And it's very intense and it's very well done. And there's a couple moments that highlight that stuff. And like actually the camera work is improving the story in a lot of ways, I thought. Just a lot of effort put into this thing.
I wasn't paying as much attention to that. That's interesting.
But the sound design is good too, especially with the vampire. Gonna get into the little spoilers here, so I definitely recommend checking this thing out.
Yeah.
This vampire at the end, they use it in really great ways because you do see it, but it's usually like in the darkness. And
I do like that they weren't doing all of the standard vampire tropes, the sunlight, the garlic,
that's
the
what was so
crosses and all.
fun.
So like it just throws you off a little bit.
Well, and it's it's like in story, so it's like
Yeah.
meta, where like the character's like, well, a vampire, what if you chop their head off, or what if you've been?
And that's part of where I get with the comparison with House Harker as well.
yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, if nothing else, you just don't know what to expect. You know what I mean? It's not like, okay, here's the scene where the sun comes up, and like we already know how this is gonna go, but like you don't know how it's gonna go at any point. So that was really interesting.
And then they add that element of like him just like absorbing people's blood as it like flows out of their bodies. That's just some like disturbing visuals.
Yeah.
And then you get the end.
Yes. Watch this movie before you hear us talk about the climax.
We're going to climax right now.
His dad's leg is already messed up, bone sticking out, it's broken all hell. His dad gives him permission, but then he rips the lower half of his leg off, stabs the vampire with him, then brings rocks down over him in a new cairn. Holy shit, it was awesome.
It's a good idea because like it's such a small scale movie. You're like, how are you gonna end this thing?
Yeah, how do you escalate it
How do you escalate when you're like in this thing? There's
Sometimes
nothing to do.
low budget movies have a difficulty with.
And it's just like a
Not
shocking
escalating
moment that's also so absurd and kind of funny when you see the vampire fall down and the boot sticking out of his chest. But you're like, oh my God, he just ripped his leg off in like a horrific fashion. Like the whole thing is so crazy. And it's so small still. That's like, it's such a good idea.
Like you see him like kind of suggest he's going to do it. I'm like, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
Awesome.
I really, really enjoyed this thing. I've seen a lot of movies this year. Not too many have stuck out to me.
Yeah,
I
I
already
would
watched
agree
this,
with that.
I already watched this thing twice. It's just fun, and I like the characters a lot, so it all worked really well.
Yep.
So, Boys from County Hell. It's out now on Shudder. It's worth checking out if you have a Shudder subscription. I think it's worth checking out even if you don't.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So that's gonna do it.
Yep, I've got one note here I want to share with you.
Okay, it's about Smog.
No, I'm thinking this must have been like an alternate title like we often do for our podcast. Check out the podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Girl with a Dumper.
Oh, because they
They
kept
call the
saying
dump
the dumper.
trucks.
Yeah.
And like I'm just seeing this girl driving the dumper down there. So we've got a girl with a dumper here. That's awesome. That's what you need. That's what you want in a woman, right? You just want a girl with a dumper.
No comment.
So please join us on Patreon. $2 a month. Check what? I can't promote.
I'm just questioning why we're doing this. No, go ahead.
no.
No. I didn't know where you were going with
You
this.
know what? Don't join the Patreon. We don't want your fucking money. Get the fuck out of here. We don't need you on Slack chatting with us. It's wild there. You don't want to check out the Patreon pre-show. I mean, just forget about it. We done now?
How neat is that? What? I wasn't listening. I was too busy looking at all the cool Slack things that are popping off with the Patreon Slack channel.
You'll never find out about because you're not going to join.
Yeah, no, that's going to do it. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you here next time. Goodbye.